Hey everyone, it's TK Friday. Today's episode is entitled Frequency Separation with Color Control. Hello everyone and welcome to the Joy of Editing with Dave Kelly. Today we're working on this flower image. Now this is my own image and I will link it in the description below this video where you can pick it up on my Google Drive. It's a TIFF file, it's a full res file, so you can go ahead and work on it because you really learn more when you actually do these techniques for yourself. And by the way, if you don't yet have the TK8 plugin for Photoshop and you want to pick it up, or you want to get some training videos, I'll give you the link for Tony Kuiper's web store in the description below this video. And if you use my promo code DK15, you'll save 15% off the TK8 plugin for Photoshop and any of the videos that are offered on Tony Kuiper's web store. When I was looking for an image to do today for the TK Friday video, I found this image and I thought, well, you know what? I love flowers. And I do a lot of flower photography, but I a lot of times find that when I take images of flowers, there's problems with them. Like if you look at this flower, you see this ugliness right here. Over here you have some discoloration, and here you have some discoloration. And there's some weird things happening on the flower here. And then up in this area here, I'd like to have more of this lavender color up here. So let me just show you my roadmap here. And I think if you guys enjoy me doing these roadmaps, just to kind of map out what I'm going to do, just let me know in the description below. I'd like to hear your feedback on it. I think it helps people, and I like doing it. So we're going to remove this little area right here. There's some yellow tint on the flower here I'd like to get rid of. And over here, there's some yellow tint in here. And there's some weird things happening in here. I want to repair this. And there's like this little line here. I want to remove that. And I want to add some lavender here. Now this is all going to be done with frequency separation, which you will find in the TK CX or combo panel. And here is frequency separation. So we're going to use frequency separation to correct these problems. And I find that frequency separation is a really great way of fixing things in landscape images, people images, or images of flowers. I use it all the time. And I have my own little twist the way I use frequency separation. I'm going to show you that today. And then after that, what I'm going to do is I'm going to do a little bit of work on the flower itself. And that will be to lighten up these filaments here, these curvy deals here, lighten them up. And there's a little bit of yellow pollen on here. I believe I'm going to increase the yellow saturation and lighten that up a bit. I'm going to increase the lightness and contrast to the petals, to the entire petal system of this flower here. And I want to increase the lavender saturation. We're going to do this all through masking and so on. It's all going to be done with the TK8 multi-mask panel. So stay tuned. After the frequency separation part, we're going to do some of this kind of work as well. Let's get started. First off, let's go ahead and click on TK, the action button here. And then we're going to come and open up frequency separation. Now, when we do this, we're greeted with a Gaussian blur dialog. Now, I found through experimentation that the default setting of 10 pixels of Gaussian blur is good for this image. And generally for most images, that's going to work. Sometimes you have to experiment with it, but usually I find that that's pretty much the right amount of blur. So just click OK. And now you'll notice we have two layers inside of a group called frequency separation, texture and color blur. And the cool thing about frequency separation is it separates texture from color. So we can add color without affecting texture, and we could add texture without affecting color, which is pretty cool. And you'll see how nice this works. And I'm going to show you my twist on frequency separation now. But before I do that, this color blur layer is designed that you could use a clone stamp on it or paint on it. Now you'll be altering color on this color blur layer. If I were to get my paintbrush here and I'm at 100% opacity and I just pick this color here by holding down my Option or Alt key and getting that color right there, and I can paint that color. You see that over that entire area, and it doesn't just go, it doesn't hide the texture. In other words, it's not just like raw paint going over texture. And that's the beauty here. But I don't like to paint on this layer, so I'm just going to undo it by clicking this button right here on the CX panel, just to go back a step. What I like to do is when I'm working on color is grab a blank pixel layer. Now you can get that blank pixel layer by clicking right here, or just use this action. It's a lot quicker and it's closer to you right here, and that puts a blank pixel layer above the color blur layer. And then if you want to work on textures, you'll be working on this layer. I'll start out by repairing this area right here. Now to do that, I need to get rid of this ugly texture in here. So I'm going to go up to the texture layer and I'll use a clone stamp and remove that. I'll go ahead and zoom in so we can really see what we're doing here. And if you see any like blotchiness in the image, it's due to the compression of the video. When using the clone stamp tool, pay close attention. Make sure you're on current layer, because if you're not going to get the results that you want. You don't want to have current and below or all layers, but make sure you're on current layer. The opacity of my clone stamp tool is at 100%. I'm holding the Alt or the Option key down and sampling an area. And then after I get that area sampled, I'm just going to go ahead and start to paint in, resampling other areas, as you can see here. And again, I'm just sampling from areas and just filling in where I think it's going to look right. Now, it doesn't have to be perfect, but it just has to look believable. I'm going to go ahead and zoom back out. All right, so what I want to do is now this tint in here, this yellow tint in here, I'm going to fix that. So let's go down to this layer 1. Remember, you can paint on the color blur layer if you want to, but I'm going to paint this on layer 1 because remember, this was called frequency separation with color control. I'll be painting on different parts of the flower, and I'll be using different tints and different amounts of saturation. I'll use different layers for that, and that's what I mean by color control. So on layer 1, I'll be sampling this color right here and be painting over these yellows here just to get rid of these ugly yellow colors here. But then I'm going to add some lavender up into here, but it may be a different shade or a different amount of saturation. So I'll have that on a separate layer, and then I'll have the layer opacities that I can come back and alter in case I overdid the saturation or whatever. So that really makes it nice, and it keeps things organized, and it gives me the control I need. I'm on layer 1, and with my brush tool, I'm going to Alt or Option click here to sample this color and vary my brush size, and then just start to paint over these ugly yellow colors, and I'll vary my brush size as I go along here and just fill it in. And if I overshoot, I can just grab an eraser tool and erase. And I have my opacity here that I can adjust just to get this dialed in just the way I want it. And I think I'm satisfied with that there. So here's a before and here is an after. So I got rid of that ugly yellow there. Next, I want to add a little bit of lavender up into this area. It's a little yellow in here. I just think it'll look nicer. So I'm going to get another blank pixel layer. Click right here, blank pixel layer with my brush tool. Type B for brush if you don't have your brush up. I'm going to hold the Option or Alt key down and click right here to sample this color right here. Now with a nice soft edge brush with an opacity of about 20%. And now I'll start painting. Now every time I lift my brush and start to paint again, I'll add a little bit more paint. And I'm just going to blend this in by lifting and adding certain amounts. If I overshoot the edges here, I can get my eraser tool, just type E and just paint along the edge. And that's what I mean by that extra control with layers that you wouldn't get if you were painting on that color blur layer. You wouldn't be able to erase. And of course, we have this opacity. If it's too strong, we could pull back on it, okay? And just add just the perfect amount that we think we need, which is probably right there. Here's the before and here's the after. Now we'll tackle this area right here of discoloration. So let's get another blank pixel layer. And now with my brush tool at 40% opacity, I'm going to sample a color close to the area. I think maybe right here. Option or Alt click and sample that, and I'm just going to start to paint. And with 40% opacity, I'm painting. Now remember, every time I lift my brush and paint again, I'm adding a little bit more paint down. And I'm just trying to blend it. I'm altering my size, and I'm using my eraser tool to clean up around the edges. And just like that, we've removed that yellow cast. Here's the before, and here is the after. Now remember, we have the opacity in case we need to like peel back on that a little bit. But I think it's good just the way it is. Just 2 more areas to clean up. We're going to get rid of this line here and fill in some of the texture that is missing in this area. I went ahead and zoomed in so we can see what we're working on. I want to fix this and fill in some texture here, but I notice I have this little light spot here I want to fix too. These are textures, so let's go to the texture layer. And I'm going to get my clone stamp tool, type S to get your clone stamp tool. I have a nice small little brush. Remember, I'm on current layer. I'm going to Option click like right here and sample this and just paint right over that little area right there. And that will, let me grab another spot. There's a little spot here. Clean that up too. So that's out of there, and I like that. And now let's fix this area. So I'm going to get a little bigger brush, and we'll sample here, and we'll just simply paint and fill this in just like so. Grab this area here, and you can sample from different points. Just hold your Option key down or Alt key down to resample. And I think that's good. Now there's an issue with the color here, but we'll take care of that on a separate color layer. But let's keep working with the clone stamp tool and fix this area up here. And now with the clone stamp tool, Option or Alt click and find a sampling area and then just start filling in these areas. I went ahead and sped the video up a little bit, but I'm just sampling different areas and just filling this in. If I get repeating patterns, I'll go ahead and resample and go over them. But all I need to do here is make it look realistic. It doesn't have to be perfect. It just has to look real. The texture's good now. I just have to work on the color of this area next. What we need to do now is click on layer 3 and let's click this icon to add a blank pixel layer above it. And now with our brush tool, and I'm going to be at about, I'm going to say about 40%. I'm going to sample this color, Option or Alt click right here. And I'm just going to work here and paint this in. Now remember, every time I lift my brush, I add a little bit more paint. I'm going to fill this in a little bit too, and just to blend things in. I'm going to work in this little area too, just to fix it up. I went ahead and zoomed back out so we can see the entire image. Now here's the before the area that we fixed right here, and here's the after. Now here's the overall before and after. Here's the overall before. And now, are you ready for it? I wish I had a drum roll. Here is the after. Look at that. Frequency separation. It's a miracle worker. You got to try it out. It works for any type of photography, not just like portraits, but anything. Let me go ahead and collapse this frequency separation group, and now we're ready for the TK8 multi-mask panel section. We're going to start out by working on these filaments, which are these curvy stems. This is called the style, this thing here, and the tip of this is called the stigma. So we're going to lighten this whole area up. We'll start there. Before I start that though, you notice right here, I just saw this here. This bugs me, this little thing here. I'm not going to use frequency separation on that. I don't need to. I'm going to put another blank pixel layer above that though and get a spot healing tool. Make sure I have sample all layers on, and what I'm going to do is just paint right across here, and there's a little dot here, and I can fix that real easy. You don't have to use frequency separation for everything. Sometimes spot healing is all you need. And now it's time to lighten up these filaments, the style, and the stigma. And to do that, we're going to use a color grading tool. So click on the color grading tool, and you must click on the plus to activate the color grading tool. And now click on the midtone block, and we'll lighten up the midtones. Now it's going to lighten up the midtones in the entire image, but I'm just looking at these filaments, style, and stigma, and they're a little on the yellow side, so I'm going to remove that color cast by just moving this down into this area, and I think that's pretty good. We can always readjust that later. Let's X out of the color grading tool, and we're going to use the zone mask, so click on the zone mask icon. Now we want to adjust the style and the filaments and the stigma, so let's click on a tone that represents them, and I say right here, click OK. And now we'll notice right here, see the circle? We're between a 5 and a 6, that's 5.5. Now it's a good idea to try the zone to the left or to the right. I'm going to go to the zone to the right and see if I get a better selection. I'm going to go to zone 6, and that's a better selection, so there's really no need to go to a zone 4. Going to a zone 6 helps. Now what if I take the slider and drag it a little bit more to the right? Let's see if I can get a little better selection. Maybe a smidge more. Yeah, I think that looks really good. Now I can take this slider and drag it to the left, start dragging it, and let's see if we can get a better selection. And I'm thinking like right there is a really good selection. Now the next step is we need to output this selection. We can lighten it up here too by dragging this to the right a little bit here and making that selection a little bit lighter. Maybe something like that. I'm getting a real nice selection. And now let me output this. I'm going to output this to a black layer with a white brush, and it's going to allow me to paint that selection onto a layer mask. And here's my black mask, and notice the selection indicators. And now with my white brush, and I'll make it a bit on the larger side because I can be sloppy here. And with 100% opacity, I'm just typing the 0 key. I'm going to go ahead and paint on my adjustment. I'm going to be rather sloppy here, and I can go back and fix little areas that I overpaint really easy. I can even hit this area again if I wanted, just to add a little bit more in here. And I think that's pretty good. Here is the before, and here is the after. Now where I overpaint, I can just type X and get the opposite color paint and make my brush smaller, and I can just, simply paint off areas that I overpainted. And I'll continue to paint till I get all these areas removed. This is just another way of working with the TK8 multi-mask panel, painting a layer mask through a selection, as opposed to using, say, like a masking the mask technique. They both work, but we do have choice and options. Now, if we need to alter our adjustment, just click on this icon right here in the color grading tool and click the color grading icon here. And then you have to click here, click one time. And all we need to do is click on this gray block because that's what we adjusted. And if we need to lighten it up more, we can lighten it up some more if we need to. Okay, and then you could work with adjusting the actual color cast itself. But I think we're good. Here's the before, and here's the after. Next, I want to bring up the overall saturation of the flower. So let's X out of the color grading tool, click on the color mask icon, and let's click a color in here that represents that lavender right here, and click OK. And this is what our mask looks like. I'm just going to go ahead and lighten it up a little bit. Not too much, but just a wee bit. Somewhere right around there. And let's output that to a hue saturation layer. And then let's simply take the saturation and build it up. It's just targeting that color right there. That's 86. That's too much. Maybe around like a 72, 73. Here's the before, and here's the after. So just that easy. And if it's too much, again, you can pull this back, or you can take the opacity and drag this opacity back a little bit. Maybe that's better at 57% before and after. Yeah, that looks more realistic, I think. I like it. We're almost done. Just two more things to do. The next thing I want to do is lighten up this pollen and give it a little bit more saturation. Let's go with another color mask. So click on the color mask icon, and let's pick the color right here and click OK. And let's see what kind of a selection we get. Man, we're getting a great selection. So let's go ahead and let's lighten that up by adjusting this like that. And we can narrow this down. See, it's picking a lot of this area out here. So let's narrow this color range. Take the circle and drag it into the left a little bit. And see how we can darken up the other areas. And just like right about there, I think is perfect. Now let me get out of this properties panel by clicking here. And let's get a black brush. And let's just simply get a decent sized brush here. And let's just paint off these areas out here that we don't want affected. Just like that, really simple. And we have all these tools in the TK8 panel, and we can even come in here and grab this stuff here that I don't want as well. And I think that's going to get it right there. Wow, that's a tiny little selection, isn't it? Let's output it to, what do you think? We're going to adjust color and lightness. Can we do that all with one adjustment? Maybe. Let's output it to the hue saturation adjustment and try it. And let's give it some lightness. We do have a lightness adjustment, so let's lighten that up somewhere right around in there. And let's give it a lot more saturation. I'm going to come up a good bit. It might be too light. Let me bring this back a little bit. Maybe right around there. Let's take a look. Here is the before. And now here is the after. The final thing I want to do is just add a little bit of extra lightness to the flower petals and a little tiny bit of contrast, and we'll be done. Let me get rid of this properties panel. I'm going to go ahead and click on the subject selection icon, and that selects our flower really well. Let's go up to my channel's active selection. Let's get a mask calculator because I want to intersect this, type the X or click the X out of here, and then I'll click the luminosity mask icon. And I want to use midtones 2. Let's click equals. We'll intersect that with our subject selection. And now let's output it, not to a color grading tool. I usually use that, but this time I want a curves adjustment by itself. Now I'm going to set a point right here, lock down the shadow area right here, and let's click on this point right here and drag up just to lighten the overall midtones of the flower petals a little bit. And let's pull down here. We have a nice little S-curve going to add contrast. So now we've lightened it. Here's the before and here's the after. We've lightened it and added a little extra contrast. And if it's too strong, I can pull my opacity back a little bit. Now let's take a look. Here is the before and here's the after. Well, let's take a look at the overall before and after. Here's the overall before. Oh, look at that thing. You know, we have discoloration in here, like this yellow. The lavender color looks kind of meek and kind of weak. These style and filaments and stigma, these are dark. And we have some ugliness on the flower here, but now the after looks like this. And now we have a beautiful flower that's ready to go out on a date. It's really been made over rather nicely, all with the help of the TK8 plugin for Photoshop. Well, there you go, everyone. I hope you enjoyed this one. Don't forget, download this image, give this a try. This is a great way of learning, and it helps you to retain what you're learning. If you enjoyed the tutorial today, please give it a like and share it with your friends. And if you're not yet a subscriber to my channel, please subscribe, click the bell notification icon. Then every time I upload a new tutorial, you'll be notified about it. I want to thank each and every one of you for joining me today in the Joy of Editing with Dave Kelly. I'll see you all right here next time, but until then, happy editing.